The indicator light on the dashboard flickered. A single amber dot in the oppressive darkness of the Mercedes. Amnon Lipkin Shahak kept his eyes fixed on the road, but his hands tightened on the wheel. The flicker wasn't random. It was a signal, a prearranged code from the back seat. One flicker, checkpoint ahead. Two flickers, abort. Three, enemy patrol, non-hostile, proceed with caution. It was one flicker. Shahak's foot eased off the accelerator, the engine's purr dropping to a low growl. Beside him, Mookie Betzer didn't move. He stared straight ahead, his face a mask of calm. But Shahak could feel the tension radiating from him, a physical presence in the car. In the back seat, Ehud Barak adjusted his wig. The cheap nylon scratched his neck. He smoothed the fabric of his dress over his knees, his hand brushing against the cold steel of the Beretta 71 strapped to his thigh. His gaze was fixed on the rearview mirror, watching the second Mercedes 100 meters behind them. In that car, two more commandos, also dressed as women, sat with their weapons concealed. The plan had accounted for checkpoints. The forged documents were perfect. The cover story rehearsed to the point of automaticity. They were 4 European tourists, 2 couples, returning from a late-night dinner party in the hills above Beirut. But a plan is just a theory. A checkpoint is reality. Up ahead, the swinging beam of a flashlight cut through the night. A soldier from the Lebanese gendarmerie stepped into the road, his rifle held loosely across his chest. Shahak brought the car to a smooth stop, the tires crunching on loose gravel. He rolled down the window. The humid night air, thick with the smell of sea salt and diesel fumes, flooded the car. The soldier leaned in, his eyes sweeping over the vehicle's interior. He saw a man driving, another man in the passenger seat. In the back, 2 women, one a brunette, one a blonde. The blonde, Barak, offered a small, nervous smile. The soldier's flashlight beam lingered on her face for a fraction of a second too long. His eyes narrowed. He saw the sharp line of Barak's jaw, the thickness of his neck beneath the string of fake pearls. He saw the calloused hands resting in the woman's lap. The soldier's own hand tightened on his rifle. He opened his mouth to speak. He had exactly 3 seconds left to live. The decision was made on September 6, 1972, in a windowless room deep beneath the Kiryat, Israel's defense headquarters in Tel Aviv. The air was stale with cigarette smoke and grief. Prime Minister Golda Meir sat at the head of a long table. Her face, usually a landscape of grandmotherly warmth, was carved from granite. Around her sat the architects of Israel's security, Defense Minister Moshe Dayan, Mossad Director Zvi Zamir, Chief of Staff David Elazar. They were not meeting as a government. They were meeting as Committee X, a clandestine body with a single, unwritten mandate: vengeance. The television in the corner of the room was replaying the news footage from Munich. Black-hooded terrorists on the balcony of the Olympic Village. The burned-out shell of a helicopter on the tarmac at Fürstenfeldbruck Air Base. 11 dead Israeli athletes and officials. The world saw a tragedy. The men and women in this room saw an act of war. The perpetrators were known. A PLO splinter group called Black September. The man who orchestrated it, the operational mastermind, was Ali Hassan Salameh, the Red Prince. But finding Salameh was a long-term project. The immediate need was for a response so overwhelming, so devastating, that it would permanently alter the PLO's calculus of terror. Zamir spoke first. His voice was low, clinical. He slid a series of black and white photographs across the table. "Beirut," he said. The brain of the PLO is not in the training camps in Jordan or the safe houses in Damascus. It is here, in apartments and offices in the heart of a cosmopolitan city. He tapped the first photograph. A man with a thick mustache and receding hairline, stepping out of a car. Mohammed Youssef al-Najjar, known as Abu Youssef, Arafat's deputy. He oversees Black September's internal operations. He gives the final green light for attacks. The next photo. A thinner man, bespectacled, holding a briefcase. Kamal Adwan, PLO Chief of Operations. He controls the armed factions in the West Bank and Gaza. Every bomb, every cross-border raid is planned in his office. The third photo. A man with a poet's face and a cigarette dangling from his lips, standing on a balcony. Kamal Nasser, PLO spokesman and a member of the executive committee. He is the voice. He turns murder into martyrdom, terror into resistance. He poisons the minds. Golda Meir looked at the photos. Her eyes lingered on each face. These were not soldiers. They were bureaucrats of death, living comfortably in a city where they felt untouchable. Beirut in 1973 was the Paris of the Middle East, a playground for spies, bankers, revolutionaries, and millionaires. Its sovereignty was a fragile fiction, its security forces notoriously corrupt and ineffective. The PLO operated with near total freedom, running their global terror network from a handful of apartment blocks in the city's affluent neighborhoods. They were protected by the tacit approval of the Lebanese government and a web of their own security forces. Previous attempts to strike them there had been deemed impossible. A conventional military raid was out of the question. It would trigger a full-scale war with Lebanon and potentially Syria. A typical Mossad assassination, a car bomb, or a silenced pistol in a dark alley was too small. It would kill a man, but it wouldn't kill the message of impunity. Mir looked at Zamir. "What are you proposing, Zavi?" Zamir slid one more document onto the table. It was a single sheet of paper, a concept outline titled Operation Spring of Youth. The plan was audacious to the point of insanity. A combined arms assault, a hybrid of special operations and classic intelligence work, targeting not one, but 3 of the PLO's most senior leaders simultaneously in their own homes. The assault force would not come from the air or across the border. They would come from the sea, landing on a public beach in the heart of Beirut. They would drive to the targets in civilian cars rented by Mossad agents already in the city. They would strike hard and fast, and then vanish back into the Mediterranean before the Lebanese army could even scramble its jets. Dayan raised an eyebrow. From the sea? Through the city? How do you get a strike force from the beach to the targets without being stopped? Zamir smiled faintly. They won't be looking for soldiers. They'll be looking for men. Our teams will be different. The genesis of the mission had been a catastrophic intelligence failure. For months, Mossad had been tracking a Black September cell in Europe, believing it was planning to hijack an El Al airliner. Resources were poured into protecting airports in Rome, Athens, and Frankfurt. But it was a feint. The real target was the Olympic Games in Munich, a place so symbolic of peace that it was considered a soft target. The intelligence that could have prevented the massacre was sitting in a file in a Mossad station in Paris. A snippet from a low-level informant about a big sports event, dismissed as insignificant. The shame of this failure fueled the rage. The mission was approved. The unit tasked with the ground assault was Sayeret Matkal, the General Staff Reconnaissance Unit, Israel's most elite Special Forces command. Its commander was a young, ambitious officer named Ehud Barak. Barak was a student of warfare, known for his meticulous, almost obsessive planning. For him, a mission wasn't a series of actions. It was a complex machine where every component had to be perfectly engineered and tested. The first component was intelligence. The mission couldn't be planned from Tel Aviv. It needed eyes on the ground. In January 1973, 3 months before the proposed raid, a Mossad Ketsa, a case officer, arrived at Beirut International Airport. She traveled on a British passport under the name Penelope Massey. Her real name was Yael. Her cover was as a writer, researching a television documentary about the life of the British eccentric Lady Hester Stanhope, who had lived in Lebanon a century earlier. The cover was perfect. It gave her a legitimate reason to travel all over the country, to meet people, to rent a car, and most importantly, to rent an apartment on Rue Verdun, one of Beirut's most fashionable streets. It was no coincidence that her apartment balcony had a clear, unobstructed view of 2 7-story buildings directly across the street. In one lived Abu Youssef, in the other, Kamal Adwan. For the next 8 weeks, Yael lived her cover. She visited historical sites. She interviewed academics at the American University of Beirut. And every day, she spent hours on her balcony, seemingly sketching or writing. In reality, she was using a high-powered camera disguised as a pair of binoculars to document every detail of the target buildings. She photographed every entrance, every window, every balcony. She logged the license plates of every car that entered the underground garage. She noted the patterns of the PLO bodyguards, when they changed shifts, where they smoked their cigarettes, how they reacted to passers-by. She mapped the life of the buildings. Simultaneously, another Mossad team was setting up shop. They arrived as a Belgian business delegation, looking to invest in Lebanon's booming tourism industry. They rented a suite of offices and 3 cars from a local Avis rental agency, 2 Mercedes sedans and a Ford station wagon. These were not random choices. The cars were common in Beirut, unremarkable. They were paid for in cash, with a large deposit to allow for long-term rental without raising suspicion. The cars were then taken to a secure garage, where Mossad technicians, flown in as auto mechanics, went to work. They fitted them with hidden compartments for weapons and explosives, and installed a sophisticated, short-burst radio communication system that was nearly impossible to intercept. The third target, Kamal Nasser, lived in a different neighborhood, several blocks away. A separate team of agents, posing as Italian tourists, rented an apartment overlooking his building and began the same painstaking process of surveillance. The intelligence flowed back to Tel Aviv in diplomatic pouches and via coded short-burst transmissions. In a secret facility in the Negev desert, Sayeret Matkal built a full-scale replica of the target buildings based on Yael's photographs and sketches. They called it Little Beirut. Every night, for weeks, Barak and his men rehearsed the raid. They practiced breaching the exact type of doors used in the Beirut apartments. They memorized the floor plans. They ran drills until they could navigate the hallways and rooms in complete darkness. They timed every action down to the second. The breach, the target identification, the neutralization, the search for documents, the withdrawal. The target was 90 seconds. 90 seconds from the moment they entered the building to the moment they were back in the cars. Not a second more. The problem of getting from the beach to the target buildings remained the mission's greatest challenge. A group of armed men in military gear driving through Beirut at night was a suicide mission. This is where the plan took its most audacious turn. Barak, studying Yael's surveillance reports, noted the vibrant nightlife on Rue Verdun. Couples, tourists, locals, walking the streets late into the night. An armed commando would stand out. A man in a suit might draw a second glance. But a woman? A couple? No one would look twice. The idea was born. Some of the commandos would be disguised as women. They wouldn't just be wearing dresses, they would become women. A professional makeup artist was brought in from the Habima Theater in Tel Aviv. He taught the soldiers how to walk in heels, how to sit, how to carry a purse. They spent hours practicing. Mookie Betzer, a large, muscular commando, struggled initially. His commander told him, "Don't try to be a woman. Be Mookie Betzer in a dress." Barak, chosen to lead one of the assault teams, found he had a natural aptitude for it. He chose to be the blonde, wearing a dark wig and a stylish dress. The disguises served a dual purpose. They provided camouflage, allowing the teams to get close to the targets without suspicion. They also helped conceal weapons. The bulky purses they carried were specially designed to hold silenced Beretta pistols and spare magazines. Under the loose-fitting dresses, they wore vests carrying grenades and explosive charges. The plan was refined. The main assault force, 16 Sayeret Matkal commandos, would land on a deserted beach south of the city, guided in by Mossad agents. They would be met by the 3 cars rented by the Belgian businessmen. The team would split. Barak's team, with him and Betzer disguised as women, would hit the building on Rue Verdun containing Abu Youssef and Kamal Adwan. A second team, led by Amnon Lipkin Shahak, would take the 3rd car and target Kamal Nasser. A third force, from the Naval Commando Unit Shayatet 13, would simultaneously attack a separate target. The main PLO headquarters building in the Fakani neighborhood, which housed a bomb-making factory. A 4th team would attack a PLO workshop in the Sabra refugee camp. This was not just an assassination mission. It was a systematic dismantling of the PLO's operational infrastructure in Beirut. The entire operation, from landing to exfiltration, had a 2-hour window. The plan was a machine with 1,000 moving parts, and with 1,000 points of potential failure. The first major setback occurred 10 days before the mission date. The agent who had been tasked with securing the landing zone, a Mossad Katsa with deep connections in Beirut's Christian Phalangist community, suddenly went silent. For 48 hours, there was no contact. Standard procedure dictated an immediate abort. A compromised agent could mean the entire network was blown. Zvi Zamir made a difficult call. He flew to Paris and activated a deep cover asset, a man who hadn't been contacted in 5 years. This asset used a back channel to a contact inside Lebanese intelligence. The report came back 24 hours later. The Mossad agent had been in a car accident. A drunk driver. He was in a hospital under a false name with 2 broken legs. He was safe, but he was out of the operation. The landing zone was now unscouted and unsecured. Barak's team had to adapt. They shifted the landing point a kilometer north, to a public beach popular with tourists. It was riskier. There would be more potential for witnesses, but it was also less likely to be under surveillance. The exfiltration plan now depended on speed, not stealth. They would have to be on and off that beach in under 5 minutes. The second crisis came 72 hours before launch. Yael, from her observation post on Rue Verdun, transmitted an urgent message. The PLO had upgraded security. Kamal Adwan, who lived on the 6th floor, now had 2 armed guards stationed in the lobby of his building 24/7. This was a direct contradiction of all previous intelligence. The original plan had the commandos walking straight into the elevator. Now they would have to fight their way through the lobby. This would destroy any element of surprise and alert everyone in the building, including Abu Youssef in the adjacent apartment tower. An emergency planning session was convened. Scrapping the mission was on the table. Betzer proposed a new entry method. Instead of using the front door, his team would scale the back of the building, enter through a window, and bypass the lobby guards entirely. It was high risk, requiring specialized climbing gear they hadn't planned to bring. The technicians worked around the clock, modifying lightweight grappling hooks and ropes. The new plan was rehearsed on the replica building for 12 straight hours, until Barak was satisfied. The final piece of technology was the weapon system. The primary assault weapon was the FN-FAL rifle, a powerful battle rifle, but it was long and impossible to conceal. For the initial approach, the teams would rely on the silenced Beretta 71.22 caliber pistol. It was small, quiet, and deadly at close range. The problem was the PLO bodyguards. Intelligence suggested they often wore rudimentary body armor. The 22 round might not penetrate. To solve this, Mossad's technical division, Mossad, developed a special subsonic round for the Beretta, with a hardened steel core designed specifically to defeat soft body armor at ranges under 10 meters. The explosives were another critical component. They needed charges powerful enough to breach heavy wooden or steel doors instantly, but with a directed blast that wouldn't kill the Commandos standing just feet away or collapse the entire floor. Betzer, the team's explosives expert, designed custom-made linear-shaped charges. They were essentially adhesive strips packed with a precise amount of composition C4 explosive. When detonated, they would vaporize the door's hinges and lock mechanism, allowing the door to be kicked in without a massive, disorienting explosion. Each charge was tailored to the specific doors Yael had photographed. The communication system was a marvel of miniaturization. Each team leader carried a small, short-burst transmitter. It couldn't send voice, only a series of pre-coded digital pulses. Pulse 1. We are in position. Pulse 2. Target acquired. Pulse 3. Mission complete. Proceeding to exfil. Pulse 4. Mission compromised. Abort and evacuate immediately. The signals would be relayed via a Mossad listening post in a yacht anchored in international waters, and from there, by satellite to the command center in Tel Aviv. It was a simple, foolproof system that couldn't be easily jammed or traced. On the night of April 9, 1973, 8 Israeli Navy missile boats slipped out of Haifa harbor and turned north. On board were the Commandos of Sayeret Matkal and Shayetet 13. The sea was choppy. Most of the soldiers, hardened veterans of land warfare, were violently seasick. Barak moved among his men, checking their gear, his face grim. He knew that more than half of all special operations missions fail before the first shot is fired. They fail because of a flat tire, a forgotten password, a sudden storm, a random police patrol. He had planned for every contingency he could imagine, but it was the ones he couldn't imagine that kept him awake. As they approached the Lebanese coast, the missile boats cut their engines and dropped anchor 12 miles out. The Commandos loaded into a fleet of black Zodiac inflatable boats. The Zodiacs, their engines muffled, skimmed across the dark water towards the distant lights of Beirut. 2 kilometers from the shore, they met the Mossad agents in a small fishing boat. The agents confirmed the final details. The beach was clear. The cars were in position. The lead agent handed Barak a single photograph. It was of a man, taken that afternoon, entering Abu Youssef's building. The target was home. The mission was a go. The Zodiacs landed silently on the beach. The Commandos spilled out, sand crunching under their boots. They moved quickly to a prearranged parking lot. The 3 rented cars were waiting, keys in the ignition. The weapons and disguises were in the trunks. In less than 3 minutes, the soldiers transformed. Combat fatigues were swapped for suits and dresses. Rifles were stashed in the hidden compartments. Purses containing pistols and grenades were slung over shoulders. Ehud Barak, commander of Sayeret Matkal, looked at his reflection in the car window. A blonde woman with cold eyes stared back. He got into the back seat of the lead Mercedes. Shahak took the wheel. They pulled out of the parking lot and drove into the heart of Beirut. 10:28 p.m. The 3 cars turn onto Rue Verdun. The street is alive with traffic and pedestrians. The lead Mercedes, driven by Shahak, slows as it approaches the target buildings. The second Mercedes follows, maintaining a 50-meter distance. The third car, the Ford station wagon, splits off, heading towards Kamal Nasser's neighborhood. 10:29 p.m. Shahak pulls the Mercedes into a parking spot directly in front of the first target building. It's a perfect spot, one Yael had identified as being a blind spot for the security cameras of a nearby bank. Barak and another commando, disguised as his female partner, get out of the back. Muki Betzer and his partner exit the second Mercedes. The 2 couples walk towards the entrance of Kamal Adwan's building, their movements casual, like they are returning from a night out. They are holding hands. 10:30 p.m. Inside the lobby, the 2 PLO guards are playing cards at a small table. They look up as the 2 couples enter. They see 4 tourists, 2 men, 2 women. They relax. This is the critical moment. Barak and Betzer release their partners' hands. As they walk past the guard's table, Barak drops his purse. It's a planned move. As the guard's eyes follow the falling purse, Betzer and the other commando draw their silenced Berettas. 2 soft thumps, barely audible over the lobby's air conditioner. The 2 guards slump forward onto their card table without making a sound. 10:31 p.m. Barak's team is in. He sends Pulse 1. We are in position. He and his partner head for the elevator to ascend to Abu Youssef's apartment on the 4th floor. Betzer's team ignores the elevator. They move to a back stairwell. They will take the stairs to the 6th floor to deal with Kamal Adwan. The plan is to hit both targets simultaneously. 10:32 p.m. Shahak, the driver, exits the car. He is carrying a briefcase. He walks to a nearby telephone pole and opens the case, revealing a sophisticated radio jammer. He activates it. All civilian radio frequencies, including police and PLO security radios, within a 2-block radius are now filled with white noise. He then takes up a position behind the car, armed with an Uzi submachine gun, acting as lookout. 10:33 p.m. Barak's team reaches the 4th floor. They approach Abu Youssef's apartment door. Barak places a small listening device on the door. He hears movement inside. He gives a hand signal. A commando places a small explosive charge over the lock. Meanwhile, on the 6th floor, Betzer's team arrives at Kamal Adwan's door. It is reinforced with a steel plate. Betzer carefully attaches his custom-made linear-shaped charge around the doorframe. 10:34 p.m. Barak gives the signal. The charge on his door detonates with a sharp crack. His team kicks in the door and storms the apartment. They are met immediately by Abu Youssef, who emerges from his bedroom, an AK-47 in his hands. A short, violent burst of fire from the commandos' Berettas. Abu Youssef falls. His wife runs into the room, screaming. A commando shoves her into a closet, unharmed. The team begins a rapid search of the apartment for documents. Simultaneously, Betzer detonates his charge. The explosion is louder than expected. The entire door vaporizes. His team pours into Adwan's apartment. Adwan is at his desk, reaching for a pistol. He is neutralized before he can fire a shot. 10:35 p.m. Unexpected resistance. A PLO guard in an adjacent apartment, alerted by the noise from Betzer's charge, opens his door and fires down the hallway with a pistol. One of the commandos on Betzer's team is hit in the leg. He goes down, but immediately returns fire, forcing the guard back into his room. The element of surprise is gone. The entire building is now awake. Lights are coming on. People are shouting. 10:36 p.m. Down in the street, Shahak hears the gunfire. He sees figures appearing on balconies. He knows their time is up. He breaks radio silence, speaking into his wrist-mounted microphone. All teams, exfil now. Exfil now. In Kamal Nasser's neighborhood, the third team has just breached his apartment. They hear the call. They kill Nasser, grab a handful of papers from his desk, and pull out. 10:37 p.m. Barak's team has found what they are looking for: a steel briefcase chained to a desk. They use bolt cutters to sever the chain. They grab the case and begin to withdraw. Betzer's team provides covering fire down the hallway as they help their wounded comrade towards the stairs. The original 90-second window has passed. They are now operating on borrowed time. 10:38 p.m. As the teams emerge from the building, a Lebanese gendarmerie patrol jeep, its siren screaming, turns onto Rue Verdun. It was not jammed because it operated on a different military frequency. The jeep screeches to a halt as it sees Shahak standing by the car with his Uzi. The soldiers in the jeep open fire. Shahak dives behind the Mercedes, the car's bodywork absorbing the bullets. He returns fire, shattering the jeep's windshield and forcing the soldiers to take cover. The firefight provides the precious seconds the assault teams need to pile into the two cars. 10:39 p.m. The wounded commando is loaded into the back of the second Mercedes. Barak, clutching the briefcase, gets in the first. "Go!" he yells. Shahak floors the accelerator. The two Mercedes speed away from the scene, tires smoking, leaving behind a chaotic scene of shouting neighbors, dead guards, and a pinned-down police patrol. The operation's combat phase is over. The escape has just begun. The two Mercedes sedans raced through the back streets of Beirut. Shahak at the wheel of the lead car, driving with a terrifying precision he had honed in countless training exercises. He knew the route by heart, a complex path designed to avoid major arteries and known police checkpoints. In the back, Barak had ripped off his wig and dress. He was now in the black combat overalls he wore underneath. He had the captured briefcase on his lap, checking its contents. It was filled not with money or weapons, but with paper. Memos, financial ledgers, lists of names and addresses in Paris, Rome, Cyprus. This was the PLO's European Operational Bible. This was the real prize. The second car followed closely, its driver expertly mirroring Shahak's every move. The wounded commando in the back was being treated by a teammate, pressure applied to the gunshot wound in his thigh. The bullet had gone clean through. He was losing blood, but he would survive. The team that had targeted Kamal Nasser rendezvoused with them at a prearranged point. Their operation had been cleaner, less resistance. They confirmed their target was neutralized, and they too had recovered a box of documents. The three cars now formed a small, high-speed convoy, heading for the coast. Behind them, Beirut was erupting. The initial reports on the police radio were a confusing mess of home invasions, robberies, and gang warfare. It would be at least 30 minutes before the Lebanese authorities understood they were dealing with a coordinated, military-style assault. That was the window. 30 minutes. They reached the beach 18 minutes after leaving Rue Verdun. The Zodiacs were waiting, engines idling. The Commandos scrambled out of the cars, leaving the doors open. They carried their wounded teammate to the boats. The last man out of the cars placed small incendiary charges on the engine blocks. As the Zodiacs pushed off into the waves, the cars erupted in flames, destroying any forensic evidence. As they sped out to sea, they could see the lights of police cars and ambulances converging on the areas they had just left. They had cut it close. The rendezvous with the missile boats was successful. The wounded commando was immediately taken to the ship's infirmary. The teams were debriefed, the captured documents secured. By dawn, they were back in Israeli waters. The world awoke to shocking news. 3 top PLO leaders assassinated in the heart of their Beirut stronghold. The Arab world was furious, accusing Lebanon of collusion. The Lebanese government was humiliated, its inability to control its own capital exposed for all to see. The PLO was thrown into a state of paranoia and chaos. Arafat, realizing he was no longer safe in Beirut, began making plans to relocate his headquarters, a process that would eventually lead him to Tunis, significantly diminishing his influence on the front lines of the conflict with Israel. The official narrative, the one Israel wanted the world to believe, was that Operation Spring of Youth was a direct retaliation for the Munich massacre, a mission of pure revenge. It was a powerful story, and it was true. But it was not the whole truth. The final revelation, the piece that recontextualized the entire operation, lay within the documents captured from the apartments of Adwan and Abu Youssef. For months, European intelligence agencies had been struggling to combat a wave of Palestinian terrorism on their soil. They were fighting shadows. Cells would pop up, strike, and then vanish. They had no understanding of the network's structure, its financing, or its leadership. The documents from Beirut were the Rosetta Stone. They contained detailed records of Black September's European network. They listed the names of dormant operatives, the locations of safe houses in a dozen cities, the account numbers for Swiss bank accounts used to fund operations, and the supply routes,